Dealing with the tragedy of losing a loved one is never easy. The sorrow of their loss, the remorse of not doing anything correctly, and the uneasiness of things being left unfinished are only some of the emotions that run through one's mind when they lose someone that they really care about, among a plethora of other devastatingly strong feelings. Today we are going to discuss 10 events that led to the following superheroes ending the lives of the people that are incredibly close to them. These heart-wrenching scenarios have not only been heavy on the characters from a narrative perspective, but also these moments leave a sort of open wound in the audience's mind. We questioned whether the death of these beloved characters at the hands of these superheroes was really worth it or not. But at the end of the day, no matter how hard to swallow the pill is, we fans have to simply accept it and move on. Contrary to that, though, these moments are really strong in the sense that they drive the narrative forward and aid the character in becoming a much more refined version of themselves that learns essential lessons of life from the hardships that they face. The trope of the tragedy of losing a loved one in fiction refers to a common narrative device where a character loses someone they deeply care about, often through death. This loss is commonly used as a means of driving the character's actions and motivations and can serve to create emotional depth and resonance for the audience. The trope has been used quite frequently in current media, but in this video, we are going to discuss some of the most impactful events that have taken place in the stories of our beloved superheroes. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small clip for you, but for us, it means a lot. So thank you. Let's begin. Iron Man killed Happy Hogan to put him out of his misery. One of the most adored characters in the Iron Man movies from the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the one known as Happy Hogan. Happy has been a loyal subordinate and friend to Tony Stark for a long time, and in the MCU, his character has never been shown to be perfect, but he always gives his all to do a job to the best of his abilities. He has even thrown his life in the face of danger if it meant that he could help his friends even just a little bit. These characteristics and his personality traits in the movies do not waver far from the portrayal of Happy in the comics. Even in the comics, Happy is an ever-loving member of Tony's team, and he cares for Pepper, Tony, and his other friends as much as they care about him. Due to the love, Tony has a special place in his heart for Happy, and in Iron Man issue number 14, we see a heartbreaking event taking place. Deaths are quite common in the Marvel comics, and that is especially true in the Civil War storylines. This is because the writers want to showcase how large the stakes are and how much of our favorite superheroes are willing to sacrifice in order to do what they believe is correct. Most of these deaths come as a direct result of the various fights that take place between the teams that have been divided by their ideals and what they believe is right. But in the case of Happy Hogan, his death was far more of a personal affair. Even though the whole situation arose only when Happy engaged in battle, his death came much later. It was Spy Master who was attempting to get Tony Stark's attention and trying to bring him into a vulnerable position who instigated an assault on his loved ones. While en route to a dinner date with Pepper Potts, Happy Hogan was ambushed by Spy Master, who was directly threatening to kill him in hopes of luring Stark out of the safety of his estate. Spy Master's plan of using Happy as a bait did not turn out to be as simple as he had hoped for it to be, since Happy was fully capable of defending himself well enough, much to the surprise of Spy Master. After a brief back and forth, Spy Master was able to break Happy's leg by swinging his own leg, causing Happy to lose his balance and tumble down the balcony that they were fighting on. As Happy was hanging on for his life with one hand, Spy Master chose to gloat and taunt him instead of finishing the ordeal. During this time, Spy Master mentions how Pepper would suffer the same fate as Happy the next day, which infuriates Happy, causing him to become outraged. But before letting go of the hand that he was using to hang from, Happy grabbed Spy Master by the neck and both of them went tumbling down to the floor from the balcony without anything to break their fall. The impact left both of them unable to move, and Happy simply muttered the words, "Sorry, Pepper," before losing consciousness. Following this, Happy was sent to the hospital, and as a result of his injuries, he had entered a state of comatose. Hearing of this ordeal, Tony went to go check on his friend in the hospital. Upon reaching there, he saw Pepper sitting beside him, who informed him of Happy's current condition. Struggling to come to the terms with the condition of their loved one, Pepper made a request to Tony. She told him about the time Happy expressed how he felt about the condition of a boxer named Cobra McCoyle, whose whole career was focused on being hit in the head and taking it like a champ. Continuous impact impact to the head had led the boxer to sustain a multitude of injuries, which eventually led to him being wheelchair-ridden for the rest of his life. Happy told her about how McCoyle is unable to even feed himself, let alone look after his own needs. So he told her how he never wanted to end up like that and how death would be a sweeter fate than ever living something like that. Understanding what Pepper might be hinting at by telling this story, Tony displayed his unwillingness to end his dear friend's life. Pepper would then insist that Tony pull the plug as a final favor for Happy. She even mentioned how no one would ever know about it, but Tony would simply respond by stating that he would know about it, insinuating that it would always be on his mind that he was the one ending his own friend's life. After much consideration and thought about what to do as the right thing, Tony was at a complete stalemate and was unable to make a decision. It was after his brief interaction with Sue Richards that Tony was able to shed some light on what needed to be done. This came after Sue mentioned how people around Stark always have to make sacrifices while he does not. Asking her to leave, Tony sat alone in the chair, looking rather sorrowful. But in the next panel, we see Happy's heart rate monitor, which shows that he has succumbed to his injuries and finally passed away. It is implied here that Tony was the one to end his suffering with a heavy heart as one final favor to one of his closest friends. Wolverine had to kill his own son. Daken is one of the most well-known sons of Wolverine, among other children that Wolverine did not even know about before the events of the Red Right Hand. The Red Right Hand was a group of people who sought revenge against Wolverine for the deaths of their loved ones at the hands of the mutant. Some of these deaths happened because they were bad people, and Wolverine was determined to put a stop to their unfair ways. Some were people who were Wolverine's targets while he was being paid to be an assassin, and some were simply collateral damage during the countless number of battles Wolverine has gone through. All of these deaths had allowed the members of the Red Right Hand to coalesce together against Wolverine in hopes of avenging their family members. Individually, these people had tried and failed to kill Wolverine due to his healing factor, which makes him kind of a pseudo-immortal. After brainstorming ways to kill a man who cannot be killed, Red Right Hand concluded that they would instead send him to hell to allow their plan to come to fruition. It was later revealed that Daken had assisted the Red Right Hand in planning out the worst possible punishment for his father by telling them about the remaining bloodline of Wolverine, which would come into play later. After a while, the group was successful in sending Wolverine to hell, where he would be tortured by the devil. Eventually, Wolverine was able to escape hell, and the first thing that he did was swear revenge on the people behind all of this. The Red Right Hand's group's location was not kept secret, thus after following some leads, Wolverine figured out about their whereabouts and made his way to their facility. He single-handedly infiltrated their headquarters and killed all of their hired muscle. After making his way to the final room, Wolverine was greeted by all of the members of the group before they all collapsed and died in front of him. Afterwards, a video recording of the people started playing, which explained to Wolverine that the Red Right Hand's group's hired muscles were none other than Wolverine's children. At the end of the day, Wolverine was unable to get his revenge and instead was tricked into killing his own kin. He was devastated, of course, with the blood of his offspring on his claws. Following this, Wolverine went into exile and tried to find moments of pleasure by jumping off cliffs, knowing he would not die. Wolverine would eventually make a return, and in Uncanny X-Force 2010 issue number 33 and 34, he would face off against Daken in a final showdown. Daken formed the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants consisting of members such as Sabretooth, the Shadow King, and Mystique, among others. Daken was scheming to corrupt or kill off Wolverine's students during his absence. When hearing about this, Wolverine knew that it was true because of a conversation with his future self who did not end Daken's life, leading to him following this plan. Since he knew the other mutants would not be able to stop him and his deeds, Wolverine concluded that it was his duty to stop his rampaging son. During their confrontation, Daken is able to trap his father in a tank of water without an escape route, and this is one of the only methods of bypassing Wolverine's healing factor since it cuts the oxygen supplied to his brain. This apparent weakness proved to be true, and eventually Wolverine lost consciousness. It was not until Deadpool made an interference that Wolverine was revived and he escaped his entrapment. Sending Deadpool to find and save the others, Wolverine made his way to finally put a stop to Daken and end his lust for revenge once and for all. As the father and son finally came face to face, Wolverine acknowledged how he would hold back his primitive animalistic instincts as Daken deserved to be killed by someone who was in complete control of his senses. In an emotional and physical back and forth, the father and son battled each other endlessly, but it was clear that Wolverine was slowly gaining the upper hand. Eventually, Wolverine was able to land a critical slash on on Dakin, which would allow him to manhandle his body. Wolverine then held Dakin's head under a puddle of water because he possessed the same healing factor as him. Wolverine did this to save the lives of his students, and with a heavy heart, he had finally slayed his son. Full of remorse, Wolverine knelt down over his son's dead body. He was then approached by Sabretooth, who revealed that he was the orchestrator behind all of this, as he knew the emotional scar that the death of his son would bring Wolverine would not be something that he could easily heal from. Wolverine was also involved in the killing of Jean Grey. Living Wolverine's life is no one's fantasy. The character has single-handedly had the worst time on Earth, and he cannot even end his suffering by taking his own life. Logan can never catch a break, and even doing the right thing for him comes at a grievous cost. In the comic New X-Men issue number 148, we can see Logan and Jean Grey being lost in space as their spaceship, or what's left of it, makes its way into the sun. This is after Scott has sacrificed himself to stop the rampaging Apocalypse from gaining the powers of the 12. Later, Magneto had infiltrated the X-Men Institute by disguising himself as a mutant who had been living with them for months and was known as Zorn. Following this attack, Wolverine and Jean were trapped in the space station with impending doom as they were unable to find any hope for survival. Not wanting to give up, Logan was scouring to find a possible solution. He even questioned Jean's internal Phoenix Force and if it was capable of flying in space. Although he knew that the Phoenix Force could inadvertently consume Jean's consciousness, he thought it would still be better than dying by going straight into the sun. Jean would explain how the Phoenix would overtake her if she allowed it to take control, which would eventually lead to it consuming planets without anyone to stop it. As time passed, Jean's condition worsened, and she finally gave up their futile attempt at finding an escape and lay on the ground in Logan's arms. Writhing in pain and agony due to the overwhelming heat and pressure, Jean would tell Logan how she was losing control of her senses. Convinced that she was about to die, Jean requested Logan not to leave her side. To this, Logan replied by saying that he would sacrifice his own life if it meant it could save hers. Continuing, he states that that cannot be the case this time, and all he can do is take life away before extending his claws through Jean. Devastated, Logan took his final breath and held Jean in his arms before finally being thrust into the sun and dying. Logan had made a difficult choice in this scenario as he had lost all hopes of survival. His utmost priority was to save Jean's life, and after being convinced that that was not possible, he realized his second priority was not to let her suffer. In hopes of sparing Jean the horrors of dying to the sun, Logan made his final decision and killed Jean in an extremely selfless manner. The writers of the story had masterfully shown how Superman came to be this way. His story started off just like any other version of Superman. He was a loving, but one day Superman wakes up at night and realizes that he can sense 2 heartbeats within Lois, implying that she is pregnant. As soon as leave Lois alone, but Lois convinced him to go and save the world and bid him farewell by kissing him and ensuring him that she would be just fine. The next morning, Superman was terrified when he found out that Lois had been kidnapped by the Joker and sent him into orbit, into space. The Joker had earlier mixed the kryptonite he had stolen from the Star Labs with the fear toxin that he had obtained from the deceased Scarecrow, which resulted in the green gas that was used on Superman earlier. Soon, Superman noticed how both the heartbeats coming from Lois's body had ended. This meant Superman was tricked into killing both his wife and his unborn child by the Joker. Superman strangled Wonder Woman with her own lasso. In the story of absolute power from alternate universes in the realm of DC, alternate versions of Superman and Batman are shown where they have become corrupted by power and have become dictators, ruling over Earth with an iron fist. The storyline is notable for its dark and gritty tone, as well as its exploration of the idea of power corrupting even the most noble of individuals. It also shows how Superman and Batman, 2 of the most iconic and beloved heroes in the comics, can become villains when pushed too far. In the plotline, the Legion of Supervillains eliminates all the members of the Justice League apart from Batman and Superman. The 2 are relatively young during this time, and they are raised by the Legion as their own children. Learning the life of evil from a very early age, Batman and Superman are brought up to rule the world as despots who put down any dissent and murder those who may have been their friends in other universes. On one such occasion, this universe's Green Arrow had even termed the duo as the Hitler twins. Soon after making this this comment, the two killed Green Arrow as mercilessly as they could, proving that he was right. As the plot developed, Wonder Woman was one of the only morally upright heroes still alive. In a confrontation between the righteous Wonder Woman and the corrupt Batman and Superman, she was finally able to kill Batman in a fight. Thinking this would weaken the evil forces, Wonder Woman was met with a horrendous fate, as all Batman's death did was enrage Superman to uncontrollable levels. Superman had grown to think of Batman as his brother, and his death was something that he could not accept. In a fit of rage, Superman approached his enemy and his brother's murderer, Wonder Woman, and beat her to a bloody pulp. Diana attempted to defend herself using her bracelets, but an infuriated Superman displayed his unfathomable powers and punched through her divine bracelets. Finally, after beating her until she was covered in blood, he made a noose out of the lasso of truth and used it to strangle her in one of the most brutal comic panels that DC has ever produced till Absolute Power's release. The time when Spider-Man killed Gwen Stacy. In this shocking arc in Spider-Man's storyline, it is implied that Spider-Man had accidentally killed Gwen Stacy, the love of his life, while fighting Green Goblin. The arc left Peter Parker as a broken man who was not able to forgive himself for his erroneous ways and his failure to save his girlfriend. He blamed himself for not only causing her death, but also putting her in harm's way in the first place. The story starts when Peter, Gwen, and Mary Jane visit Harry, who is dealing with drug abuse and is in a very bad state. Before their visit, Norman Osborn had developed amnesia and forgot about his villainous past, where he was the Green Goblin. He even forgot that Spider-Man was actually Peter Parker. But on this fateful day, after throwing the three out of his house because he blamed them for Harry's condition, he had a meltdown that inadvertently brought back his memories. Realizing what has to be done, Norman swears revenge on Spider-Man and ensures that he would make him feel the same kind of misery that he had felt after losing his family. Targeting what mattered most to Peter, Green Goblin kidnapped Gwen Stacy and threatened to kill her. After Spider-Man had arrived at the scene in hopes of saving Gwen from him, he sees an unconscious Gwen in Green Goblin's arms. As the fight between the two commences, Spider-Man makes it his priority to ensure that Gwen is safe. Seeing this, Goblin throws Gwen off the bridge they were fighting on. In a hurry, Spider-Man attempts to catch her by webbing up her legs and grabbing hold of her before she makes an impact on the ground. Believing he has saved her from the grips of death, Spider-Man holds her up and tries to see if she is fine. He quickly learns, though, that she has passed away. Peter is not sure if Osborn had already broken Gwen's neck before his arrival, or if the whiplash from her rapid halt while he was trying to save her shattered it, but he still takes the guilt for her passing on his own conscience. As the Green Goblin makes his getaway, Peter weeps over Gwen's body and swears that Green Goblin will pay for killing the love of his life. Hal Jordan went on a killing spree, murdering his fellow Emerald Knights. Hal Jordan, also known as Green Lantern, was one of the most righteous superheroes ever written in fiction until the Emerald Twilight arc. In this story arc, Hal attempts to use his ring's power to reconstruct a whole city in its entirety after the evil duo of Cyborg Superman and Mongol destroy his hometown of Coast City. They had entirely eradicated the city's populace and left Hal with nothing but mountains of cinder and ash. What Hal was planning to do was a major task because a structure of such massive proportions would completely drain the ring of all of its charge and put immense pressure on Hal. Despite the downfalls, Hal decided that he had to at least attempt to bring Coast City back to what it was. After he began the process, Hal was contacted by the Guardians, who were furious at him for using the ring for personal reasons. The Guardians even threatened Hal because of his insubordination and commanded him to report back to them for disciplinary action. Hal, driven mad by grief, was determined to confront the Guardians because he was furious that they would try to punish him for his humanity and disregard the personal tragedy he endured in the service of the Corps. He was determined to acquire their immense powers in this state of insanity so that he might restore what he had lost. Before he could reach their homeworld, a group of the Green Lantern Corps' best soldiers was sent to fight and stop him. Hal Jordan single-handedly went through all the initial line of defense and then faced most of the Guardians and beat them all and obtained their rings. Hal even went ahead and killed Kilowog, who was his longtime friend, before making his way to Sinestro, who was released in hopes of being the last in line of defense against Hal, whom he also killed by snapping his neck. Now that the Guardians were killed and the whole Green Lantern Corps was effectively neutralized, Hal entered the Central Power Battery and absorbed all of its energy, coming out not as the Green Lantern, but as Parallax. Cyclops murdered his father figure. In the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline, Cyclops led a group of mutants against the forces of the Avengers in the hopes of doing what was right. The group consisted of Cyclops, Namor, Colossus, Emma Frost, and Magic. These X-Men teleported to the moon where they planned to confront the Avengers so that they could proceed to reclaim Hope. Hope was the first mutant baby to be born, and she possessed the powers of the Phoenix Force inside of her. Cyclops and the other mutants considered Hope to be the herald of the rebirth of mutant kind, while Captain America and the rest of the Avengers were warned that the Phoenix Force would be the herald of Earth's destruction. Due to a conflict of interest, the Avengers and X-Men were destined to cross paths. After the group led by Cyclops reached the moon, they were greeted by Thor, who was followed by the Phoenix. While Iron Man was creating a weapon to combat the Phoenix, a battle broke out between the X-Men and the Avengers. The Phoenix was attacked by Iron Man, but instead of being destroyed, it transformed the 5 X-Men into its avatars. Hope was then sent back to Earth by Cyclops and the other avatars so that she could be prepared for what was to come. As the events followed, the powers of the Phoenix Force and the 5 X-Men dwindled to only 2, Cyclops and Emma. This meant that Scott and Emma had a massive increase in their powers, but also resulted in their numbers being significantly less than before. Eventually, understanding the errors in Cyclops' leadership, the remaining X-Men united with the Avengers against Emma and Scott. When the tide of the battle shifted in favor of the Avengers and X-Men, Cyclops removed Emma's final piece of the Phoenix, making him the Phoenix's only host. Cyclops finds this to be too much, and he loses control, transforms into Dark Phoenix, and murders Xavier. In order to rekindle mutant kind, Hope and the Scarlet Witch were able to dispel the Phoenix Force from him and use the powers for good. This sequence of events was incredibly heartbreaking, as Charles Xavier's death at the hands of his star pupil Scott Summers was something the fans had never expected. It came as quite a shock that the person whom the professor depended on the most to lead their fellow mutants succumbed to such a fate. After investigating a huge amount of time and cultivating the foundation of Xavier and Scott's father-son-like relationship, Xavier dying due to Scott losing control of himself is one of the most saddening ways to go for such an iconic character. The time when Bruce Banner killed his own father. Brian Banner was the father of Bruce Banner, and like his son Bruce, he was a scientific prodigy. He was a brilliant scientist, but he was also a disturbed individual, one who struggled with the demons in his head, causing continuous anguish. A troubled man who focused solely on his work and nothing else. Brian's commitment to his job ultimately resulted in losing everything in his life. Brian began to get into the habit of consuming alcohol endlessly as a result of the demanding work schedule he often subjected himself to. In addition to making him lash out at people closest to him, mainly his family, his drunkenness also contributed to an explosion at the plant where he used to work, resulting in his permanent termination from ever working there again. This nightmare fuel of fatherhood came into being before Bruce was even born. This meant that Bruce's welcome to the world was not destined to be a pleasant one. Brian had increasingly become more unhinged and showed signs of being completely insane quite frequently. After Bruce was born, Brian thought that his child possessed the monster gene from the moment that he took his first breath, and it didn't take long for Brian to start abusing and assaulting both his wife and child. One fateful day, Brian found Bruce and his mother, Rebecca, scheming their eventual escape from the grasp of this madman. Enraged, he soon captured them again and proceeded to brutally beat his wife, eventually bashing her head into the pavement and killing her. Brian was sent to a mental institution following this, where he spent 15 years in total. The medical professionals felt that Brian was prepared to return to society after he showed signs of his sanity. Bruce reluctantly agreed to let his father temporarily live with him. At this point, Brian started acting strangely once again, which raised the ante in the father-son conflict. Since it was the anniversary of his mother's passing, Bruce left the house after Brian yelled at him and blamed Bruce for driving him insane. But not willing to let go, Brian pursued him and began tormenting Bruce, calling him a monster and a mutant. The argument suddenly turned violent, and Brian knocked Bruce to the ground. Bruce shoved him back with his foot from the ground. After losing his balance, Brian stumbled back, hitting his head on Rebecca's tombstone, instantly resulting in his death. Mystique killed her son Graydon for the greater good. While on a mission, Mystique, who was posing as a German spy named Lenny Zauber, indulged in sexual relations with the assassin known as Victor Creed, who also went by the alias Sabretooth. Mystique soon realized that she was pregnant, and eventually, much to her surprise, she gave birth to a human child even though both parents were mutants. The child was named Graydon Creed. Mystique knew that she could not give the child the upbringing that he deserved, so she put him up for adoption. Not willing to completely abandon her child, Mystique kept a close eye on him to make sure that he was okay. Growing up, Graydon started to despise his parents, and upon getting to know about his mutant heritage, he started to grow very weary of the mutant community as a whole. This was a direct response to his mutant parents completely abandoning him after birth, which understandably did not sit very well with him. This resentment of mutants shaped Graydon's life choices and what would follow. In his later years, Graydon was one of the founding members of the Friends of Humanity, an organization that opposed the rights of mutants by carrying out terrorist attacks against peaceful mutants and mutant supporters, and they used the deeds of violent mutants like Magneto to gather sympathy for their cause. During this time, he also partook in the activities of a group known as the Upstarts. They were a gang of influential and violent young people who the Games Master was manipulating for his own enjoyment. During one of Graydon's presidential candidacy rallies, Mystique decided that she would put an end to the life of her son to help her mutant community. She didn't want any other innocents to suffer due to her child becoming someone influential who was hell-bent on making their lives difficult. So to do so, Mystique chose to assassinate her son using a rifle that she covertly used to shoot Graydon down, which resulted in his death soon after. Conclusion. The trope of the tragedy of losing a loved one in a superhero comic serves as a powerful device for character development. It allows writers to explore the emotional depth of their characters and their reactions to loss and grief. This trope also allows for the creation of complex and nuanced characters who are not defined solely by their powers or abilities, but also by their humanity and vulnerability. Additionally, it allows for the exploration of themes such as the cost of being a hero and the weight of responsibility. Overall, these heartbreaking moments still have us in shock and may be attached to the stories of these iconic characters for years to come. And if you liked our content, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. And in the meantime, have a good one and be safe. Thank you, everybody.